Church from Southern Bigfoot Alliance and Crypto House. And these guys are awesome. They do an awesome presentation. In fact, it's kind of cryptids with comedy. It's great stuff. You might see them in Vegas one day. Ladies and gentlemen, Brian and Shane.
If I could get Miss Cordet to come up here for a second. You got long legs. You can go fast. She works so hard. And her museum is like the best hub for Bigfoot in this area. That you are our investigator of the year.
The good thing about Bigfooting is not only, everyone can't get out in the woods and do things. Everybody does their own type of research, whether it's on a computer, watching documentaries, things like that. She has established a place for us that facilitates us to meet and, get to know each other and talk about things. So that's a lot of work and a lot of effort. And we really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. It's gonna be kind of hard for us to stay away from each other.
Yeah, it is.
Hopefully we got a snuggle time.
Too much bromance going on.
Yeah, a lot of romance going on. So Shane Church and I are one of the founders of Southern Bigfoot Alliance. We started in 2017, I believe. I think we're just around 5,000 members now, so it's grown quite a bit. A couple of our members are here helping us today. We also started a podcast a few years ago called The Cryptoholics. I don't know if any of you watched that. It's kind of a lame show about two guys talking about nothing. Sometimes it involves Bigfoot, sometimes it's ghosts, sometimes it's wherever it goes.
Unscripted and
Totally unscripted.
Mistakes are welcome.
There is an after hours part where it's no kids allowed at a certain point, so it kind of can go off the rails at any moment.
So before we started the group, we were in another group, and we kind of didn't like the way it was being ran, which we had no control over that. So Brian and I and 4 other guys got together. We made Southern Bigfoot Alliance. It's a great team. It's different minds, different perspectives. We don't always agree with one another, which I think works perfectly as a collective. So we can come to evidence from many, many different ways. My personal perspective is anatomy. I went to art school. I drew naked folks for like a year. Fat, skinny, pretty, old, you name it.
I'm offended that he has not asked to draw me yet. But it's kind of weird we've known each other this long. You haven't asked.
It's coming.
Okay.
But what we're going to do is we're going to obviously go through our evidence.
So this is just one of our research areas. It's something that popped up in 2018 for us that wasn't really on our radar, wasn't on a lot of people's radar. It's something that we kind of luckily ran into. So we're going to focus today just on our time, just on an area that we call Squash Creek. And my son is assisting. His name is Clicker. So,
The lead that led us to Squatch Creek.
So basically, how many people here are familiar with morel mushrooms? Anybody hunt those? And how many of you will take me to your morel mushroom hotspot? No takers. So I was in a group on Facebook, and there was a young girl that posted this photo with her shoe next to it. And she said, "What do you guys think this is?" Of course, everybody made jokes. It was Shaquille O'Neal. It was Incredible Hulk. It was all kinds of some country guy. Well, I messaged her, and I wanted to talk to her a little bit about it. And I ended up basically persuading her to take me to the spot. I don't like morel mushrooms. I eat morel mushrooms, so I think that helped her out a little bit. I went there. There were 4 tracks. We were successful in casting 2 of those. They're actually over there on display right now. They're not the best because it was my first time ever doing that. But that's kind of where the journey started on that day, and that was April 2018.
The following day, I think it was, after you cast, I showed up on the weekend. Next slide, Clicker. And one of the things is our group, we have a fellow named Tim, and for some reason, Tim has made it his priority to know what the moon is doing when we're. I know it sounds ridiculous, but
it does.
As we go through this, it's kind of strange.
Yeah.
So we've got, almost 70 degrees. It was a waxing crescent moon days prior. There's a right foot and there's a left foot. 16 inches length, 8 inches wide. That's a big foot.
It's a big foot.
Brian,
Yeah, this is how we come up with, we wanted to make the cast as thick as possible, because we didn't want it to break. So we just took some metal flashing, I believe it's 8-inch flashing that you use around your roof. Just pin it around there and tape it together, that way we can pour it pretty deep. I believe those first two are probably 2 to 3 inches deep in those parts.
Yeah. So in between the second and third foot steps, right above it was a fresh green branch break. It's probably only about this big around. But I guarantee you no one in here is gonna twist and break a green live tree branch and just snap it. So it snapped off. So we're just obviously looking at this track line. So we measured it, 8 foot 10 inches. We don't know if the head hit it,
If you reached up and grabbed it.
reached up, grabbed it, got mad at the little Sasquatch kids, knocked it down, I don't know. But all I know is it was there, and it was right above the second and third step in the track line. Is it 8 foot 10 inches? Does anyone notice anything? I don't know if y'all can see this very well. But this is the left foot when it stepped off the bridge, and then after a right foot step, it stepped on the flat ground. So it steps off the bridge, and it's walking.
Now, when we say bridge, folks, we mean it's probably no more than 24 inches
Yeah.
tall. So it's not like a highway bridge. This is a little dirt road or a little creek, no name to it or anything like that.
I put some lines in here. When it stepped off the bridge, those little toes are moving to the left. Almost like as when we're stepping out of the shower on the rug, and that anticipation. Your foot just doesn't stay flat when you step off onto anything, it moves, right?
It's looking to grip, it's looking for security. And Shane did an excellent job showing these yellow lines, because so many times when you see footprints, you automatically want to assume that they could be fake, they could be hoaxed, things like that. Is it a plywood cutout? Is it Shane's foot? Is it my foot? Is it our 8 foot tall buddy's foot? But what he's trying to show you in this is that he wants you to see that these toes are moving. So it's impossible for it to be a plywood cutout. It has to be something that's living and moving.
Not only that, but the mud tells the same story in between the big toe and the next toe. It's nice and it's pushed together just a little bit, but when it's stepping on flat ground and I'm stepping off of something, it really pushes up in between the big toe and the next toe. This was great, because when Brian cast this, yeah, he had some problem with the plaster, we were green.
Sure.
But that toe, that really got me, the
Kind of
detail
a-
on the toe.
Yeah, kind of a large spade, which is unique to another one that you're going to see. This same 16-inch side. It has a different right toe. So
Also, I want y'all to remember this, because it had something on the heel. I don't know if it's a callus, I don't know if it's a healed injury, I don't know what it is, but it's there. And I wouldn't have thought anything of it until we found other prints
later
with
on.
the same individual.
Yeah.
And also, Brian pulled 2 hairs out of.
So the hairs are interesting. Right in the center of the right foot on both sides, where Shane will tell you that these things have a mid-tarsal break, and where I will argue with him that they don't.
Oh, let me see.
So we'll see one of these days. One of us will be proven right. But there were 2 reddish brown hairs in the mud on both sides. We extracted one that was about 2 to 3 inches, saved it, and another one broke when we pulled it. It was only about an inch. I sent the smaller hair to Dr. Meldrum in 2018. I spoke to him yesterday. Still waiting on the results from that. Hopefully we'll get that this week. He's just doing a microscopic hair analysis for us. Won't tell us if it's Bigfoot or anything, but at least it'll tell us if it's hair. The other sample, actually, if you guys are familiar with Darby Orcutt, there's a lot of stuff going on in North Carolina State. Right now they're doing DNA testing for Sasquatch. I'm actually meeting him in North Carolina Monday night, and I'm giving him the long hair so they can run a DNA analysis on it.
So what Darby's done is he's put together a team of scientists, people he knows. They all have different techniques, different studies, and they're all looking into this subject matter. It's amazing. To To me, they're like the Avengers, Bigfoot DNA analysis or whatever. But go ahead. So, June 23rd, just a couple months afterwards, waxing crescent moon, days prior. I put down here timing his lighting. Kendall, Bray, and I showed up about 35-40 minutes before Brian did, and we checked the creek. We're going to do it overnight, all weekend camp, and really look into the area. Brian shows up, about 40 minutes later, because Kendall and I, we walked right past that track. Walked right past it. But what changed in 30-40 minutes? The sun, the lighting.
Yeah, so it just cast a little bit of shadow on it, so whenever I met up with them and we went down, they just kind of hurried off, and I stepped back, and what highlighted for me was the toe. It looked like I thought it was a deer track, just like what you see in the middle of the foot there. And I thought, man, that's a really big buck. And so I got interested because I hunt. And so I went and looked at it again. As I kind of got a little bit closer, I noticed that there were more toes, and then you could see this very pronounced 20-inch footprint.
And we also had something around the second and the third toe. It looked like there was like a deformity or something, but we really couldn't tell from the track itself. And that's another thing, you're out in the field, if you're doing this, cast it.
Always
if you're
cast it.
questioning it, just cast it. Because
Always cast it.
when you pull it, you clean it off, it's going to tell you a whole different story. And that's what this one did. We could see that there's 3 deer prints. This thing was at the edge of the creek. When deer go up to a creek, they do that little stance, It's classic.
So what we think happened with that is that this thing stepped there and maybe some water kind of puddled up in the foot as the rest of the water kind of recessed away, and it kept that center real damp. And as the deer came down to drink, of course this isn't the deer.
Yeah, it's not that short.
He just stepped right in that footprint and then kind of bent down to get some water, so.
And then, so I put it in the back of the Jeep and snugged it all up for the night, and I just took that shot because the nighttime light and the interior light from my vehicle, it just kind of brought it to life. And actually, this actually haunted the hell out of me when we went back home.
Well, that night too, so.
Yeah, because, we got what, a 16-inch track leaving, individual that possibly could be, 8 foot 10 inches, maybe, just based off of coincidence. How big is a 20-inch track leaving individual?
He's 3 foot tall. I thought it was
3 foot
tall.
tall,
Yeah,
yeah.
3 foot tall, really big feet, so.
All right, so this is my footprint. And I did mine in my own backyard, just so I could compare it to this thing, because like I said, it was like totally haunting me. But over here, I learned something when I cast my print. My toes do not look like that. The big toe and the next toe. That's because when I stepped into the ground, I either went against, I think it's the cement from my pavers. I got to thinking about it.
I think you ought to take your shield off and prove it. I think your toes.
But that did not hurt. I didn't feel it. But when I pulled the print and cleaned it off, I got this big gouge in my foot. That's just tissue. It just gets pushed in.
And that's a size 11 foot you have? Is that a decent
That's a size 11, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just checking.
So now what we got? We got a 16-inch and a 20-inch track leaving, Sasquatch, Bigfoot, monster. So now we got 2. We got 2 coming to this area for whatever reason. Oh man, January of 2019, Mr. Bill, raise your hand, Mr. Bill. That guy right there. He shows up to the creek, because that's what we do. We kind of, in intervals, go out there and check the area and report back to one another, hey, didn't find anything. Hey, this has changed in the creek. There's no water in the lake, that sort of thing. And so Bill sends this, and it's like, all hands on deck, pull the alarm, let's go.
We're all
I live in Texas, so I drive from Texas. These guys are in
Yeah,
Oklahoma.
we're all probably an hour and a half or so away.
Yeah.
Maybe hour and 45, so.
So Bill pulls this, and this is a new lesson that we learned. When you're casting in very, very cold weather, the plaster just doesn't set up right. And Bill pulled it, it kind of cracked apart. Actually, Bill, you didn't use that border, man. You gotta use that border.
You gotta get it deep. Gotta get it deep.
You're gonna kill me. But I learned something cool from this. Not just, the plaster doesn't set up in the cold. Go ahead, man. that flexor tendon that we all have, that runs from your calf to your big toe, when this thing stepped on the bridge, off the bridge, did that protrude enough to leave it, an impression in the track that it left? I mean, I'm not saying that's what it is, but that's what it looks like to me.
It definitely fits it.
Yeah.
It definitely does, so.
Here it is. Bill's track has that same thing on the hill. It's the same thing.
Callus, scar, whatever it may be.
So months and months later, it's still going through that's its path. That's the path it's on. And then 1 to 2 years even prior to us even going out there, a gentleman, you got a hold of me.
Yeah, the guy that I ran into on Facebook, he actually had a cast of that same area. He had some photos of it. I believe it was about 2 years prior to us. And same anomaly there.
It's the same
Something
thing.
going on that hill. So
But it's smaller. So, is it a cow? I don't know. I mean, you're barefoot all the time. Something's got to build up there, right? And then his, you could really see the toe. That's that spade looking toe that Brian had in his cast from spring 2018. On the very end, what is that? A little dent? Probably hit a rock. Hit something in the ground. Pushed in.
got toes like you.
Got toes like me. Pushing into the tissue. That tells me it's organic, right? It's a living thing. The anatomy of that's just beautiful. So, go ahead, Lynn. So now we're
Looking at 3 different individuals.
looking at 3 different individuals, but this is the first time that the 20-inch track leading individual and the 16 are together. So now it's like, okay, what do we got? We got a unit? Is it family?
Yeah, so are we thinking, is this father, mother, is this male to female? I mean, we don't know how they exist and how their group is, but.
And we had we had a 20-inch track line that went off the bridge. It like took a couple of steps, and this is where I started thinking like, man, these things are pretty intelligent. Because it took a couple of steps off the bridge, and it got up on a real hard surface, and then it crossed the creek. And I was like, why didn't it just stay right there and cross the creek? I don't know, to me, it's like, it was thinking.
Definitely aware of its surroundings.
So we're thinking maybe we have 3 because there's another set of 20 that went around that bend. And I was like, wait a second, maybe we do have 3. Definitely 2. So, and that's just what I was saying, it led up to the creek's edge. It was the steps in between each print was about 5 foot and some change. Okay, that's it.
Also, if you see on the picture on the left, I know you see those 2 sticks with the X. The Sasquatch did not leave those there for us, so let you guys know that. That's us doing that so we don't step in them. And we'll talk about that.
Well, actually, Bill did step in one of these.
I didn't want to call Bill out.
Oh, sorry, Bill.
There. I mean, that's rude to do that to a guy like that.
So this is pretty impressive because the one in June, we feel like it had been there just a little bit, and it was June, it was hot, it dried it out. I don't think we were getting the exact measurements of this, not like we're gonna get exact measurements out of this, because you guys actually have the foot, but I was really excited about this, because it's like, oh my God, dude. We actually ran out of plaster. And it was so cold when we were filling these tracks in that we built a little fire and we were putting coals on top of the plaster to help it cure.
Yep. And then covered it with dirt and
Covered up with dirt.
dry out. So.
We did learn something at Onabi though. There's a guy that uses dental stone to make dentures and whatnot. He works with dental stone all the time. He says, and y'all take this to heart, when you're casting something, if you got extra plaster that breaks off, save it. Grind it up really, really fine into a powder. And then you add that into your next plaster mix up. He calls it slurry. And it speeds up the process of, I wish I'd have known that when we were doing this, because we lost like 2 tracks on cast. They let crumble like feta cheese out there in the cold.
And we played around with different varieties of casting material too also. I mean, everybody's familiar with plaster Paris, things like that. I come from the fence industry. There's a product that we use called Quick Rock. It's an accelerant. It's like a real fine powder. You can mix it in concrete, but you can also just mix it directly with water, and it's almost like a grout. And we've used that on some things, and it gives great detail. It's about $100 a bucket. It seems kind of expensive, but you'll love the detail in it. So
I mean,
we tested it with,
You can mix it water thin,
yeah, it's
water.
like drinkable,
Yeah.
but don't drink
Yeah.
it. Disclaimer.
Don't drink, you might have a hard time on the old can later.
You might be screaming for ice cream.
All right, so we were talking about how you stepped off the bridge and then you got up on the ridge and then crossed over to go across the creek. Now, it's been 5 foot and some change in a stride.
And I know it's hard to see, so I'm
It
gonna
is.
highlight that one there, and then there's another one, I believe it's right here, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, to the left a little bit.
Oh, right here?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So now these footprints are pretty close together considering what over 5 foot is. I'm like, what is this? What's going on with this? And I think it was a stutter step. Like, you know, we've all done it. Like you're running, you stutter step a little bit to jump over something.
Right
something
before you
like that.
dunk.
Yeah, right before.
I see you dunking all the time, man. That's what I'm familiar with, so.
So we look across the creek. And, before that, so this is one of the tracks in the stutter step that I barely salvaged. I mean, you can see the middle, it's actually over here too. I actually salvaged this, a lot of that crumbled off. I got it home, I set it on the carpet, I put heaters around it, and I told my wife, don't you touch that, don't touch it.
How'd that work out?
Because this marriage just might end on this carpet right now.
I bet
So she let it be.
She probably said that, this marriage is gonna end, but.
Yeah, she said, when I brought her.
Yeah.
So it cured, and I was kind of upset that it was broke, but not really, because I got to use it in comparison for the follow-up track across the creek. And there it is. So you got this punch in the bank. And we brought that cast with us. In this punch, you can see the toes going through the mud, literally, in this track cast. And this,
So when we saw this, it really, when you look at it, it looked like just a blob. You know, we knew that it had hopped over, we knew it had made this impression in the bank. We just didn't know how we were gonna cast it, because it's on a little bit of a slope. But we knew we had to. We talked about it, we could see the movement in the toes, we could tell that this thing came down, slid, and came up to get up on the higher elevation. I don't remember how much plaster it took us, I think it was probably close to 20 pounds, maybe,
Something
of
like
plaster to get us to pour that.
it's heavy, it's very heavy.
Super heavy, yeah.
But we knew it was gonna give us a lot of great information, and it did. It's amazing. Because the track before that, the one that broke, that was walking on a flat surface. All the toes are nice and flat. And this, you can actually see the toes doing this as it goes through the mud. I'm sorry, that's not fake. It's impossible.
Definitely hard to do with.
And this was January. This sand was not easy to penetrate at all. So there it is in all its glory, right? So if you look to the left, that's the hill. And then you don't have to see it after this, but the hill, and then all the toes are kind of like right here on the first part of it actually touching the surface. But then that hill is not seeing the rest of the movement. It popped up as all this went through the mud, mid-tarsal stuff
break
going on there, Brian.
All right. I still don't believe in the tarsal break there, but you can be very
Here it is.
on it, though.
So I colored the toe. I colored the very tip is the yellow. That's the very first hit on that bank with that big toe. And then the green is where it actually got its footing. So the yellow and the yellow, there was the first hit, and the rest of it just went right, just followed through until it got its footing and then lifted its foot up. You can see the toe bent right there. And then the track before it, the toe was completely flat.
This is where we argue at camp, but we won't do that today, because we only got allotted 1 hour, so.
And right here, again, I did it again, so I just did this last week, I took those pictures, I did the black line. That's the same toe, it's moving.
And the key thing again here is also with the lines, what Shane's trying to get you guys to understand and everyone else, that we meet so much scrutiny about these. he's showing that there is flexibility. This isn't a guy walking around with plywood taped to the bottom of his feet and doing these jumps. I mean, you're not gonna get that kind of flexibility unless you have some type of, I don't know what it would.
Flexibility, and then whatever they're making out of, if it's fake, it would have to respond to anything that's in the dirt, rocks, sticks. I mean, how do you plan for that?
Yeah.
You know? Go ahead. All right, April 2020, this is my favorite time right here. Because I actually now, to this date, I got accused of making these. Me. If I was making these, I'd be working for Stan Winston, Jim Henson, and I guarantee you David Ford would be blowing my phone. So, all day I dream about Sasquatch, so I might as well just go with it. I wear Adidas, let's do it.
Well, I mean, because you
Oh,
were
yeah.
accused that Adidas is what.
But yeah, I was accused that that Adidas, that clean Adidas stomped into the ground, put my hoaxy track thing, and then I jumped close to 5 feet and did it again, right and left, right, for 5 steps.
Correct.
I was accused by, I'm not gonna say his name, we'll call him Biff Kalakman, okay?
You're not that coordinated.
Thanks.
Wow. I didn't know we'd have a heckler in the audience.
Oh, man. Well, I did go out that door and hit that. So Biff Kalakman rode to Texas without a horse and smelling like 4th grade science. And what he did is we had a gentleman come out here that's never been to the area. We were kind of bringing him in. He seemed like he was the right kind of mind. And what happened is I stepped in a trap. It happens.
Yeah.
When I see these things, it's like I come downstairs and every present under the tree is for me. It's that exciting. It's that exciting.
So it's not just one track, so that's the other thing too we need to make sure we emphasize is that it's a series of tracks.
Mhm.
And while Shane is excited and videoing and doing whatever it is he's doing, he did step in one. And it took us a while to figure that out. That was a
Yeah.
mystery.
I didn't even know it.
We poured it, we saw it. We didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
So
I think Dustin said it looked like a Copenhagen layer.
somebody said that,
Something
a
like that.
burlap sack, all kinds of weird stuff that we were guessing, so.
So the trackway consisted of 5 steps, 3 of them were cast. The gentleman that came out up there with us, he took 2 of them with him, and plus we gave him a 20-inch.
We gave it.
We gave him a 20-inch. Well, Biff Kalakman took all that with him. So why would you take all this fakeness with you? Doesn't make any damn sense at all. So we had 5 tracks, I think, let's see, 3 were cast, and then there was 1 that was untouched. Go ahead, man. So the one that was untouched, I dug it up. I went back out there because I found out that that track did not get cast. I go, I'm going back out there and I'm digging that up because I'm already hearing stirrings of Biff's stuff. I'm like, oh, hell no.
How
This is
did
not insurance.
how did Mrs. Church feel about that Pyrex bowl being used for Bigfoot dirt?
She doesn't know.
She knows now, buddy.
So I got the dirt because I'm thinking, holy crap, man, we shed skin cells all the time. I mean, dust in our house. I mean, we're constantly shedding skin cells. Why can't something walking on the ground and that sand not act like it's some kind of loofah or a grinding? There's got to be something in there. There has to be something in there. So I started talking to Darby Woodcut about 2 years ago, and we were rolling this thing around in our heads. We had some pretty lengthy conversations, and he just hit me up 2 weeks ago. Him and his team of scientists are in cahoots with a zoo. They're going to go to the gorilla enclosure, the gorilla that walks back and forth. They're going to dig his track up. They're going to develop their techniques and their strategies and see if they can find that gorilla's DNA in that track. And then they're taking that. They're taking that, along with the hair that Brian's getting Monday.
Yep.
So this is which was really great. So on this time that we cast, I noticed this little hole in the bottom, and you can see it over here once we're done, in the bottom of this track. I was like, what is that? It just looks very strange. Go ahead, man. Sticks and stones. It's got to be something pressing into its foot. There's my toe. There's one of our 20-inch tracks. It's still got rocks embedded in it. And then, of course, the guy that cast way before we did.
Yep. Once again, showing soft tissue, that's the thing.
Y'all remember like being a kid on the playground and maybe you're sitting down with your friends? I don't know about in Oklahoma, but in Texas, we always had like those little pebble rocks. They kind of filled the playground, and we just sit there for a while, and then, you know, once in a while you might lift your hand up, and you have like 2 or 3 or 4 rocks stuck in your hand, because it pushed in there.
We got grass here in Oklahoma.
I'm back on Texas.
Bermuda.
Oh,
I won't talk about Texas. I'm sure we got plenty of Texans in the
do we
audience.
have any Texans in here? All right, we gotta stick together.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. So I made a mold, because I wanted to make replicas for the guys. So I built a clay dam around it, and I poured rubber silicone.
Kind of looks like that Iceman thing.
Hey, there you go.
Talking about right there.
Here you go,
Yeah.
Ken.
We got the Iceman's foot for you.
Right there. When I pulled the mold, that little hole, the mold molded inside of it. And it's either a rock or a stick or a root. Yeah, a root. It's like in the creek bed. And it stepped on it. And when it got off of it, that's the impression that's just left. Go ahead. So I took it to work and measured it. And people were like, what the hell are you doing?
Let the cat out the bag of work, didn't you?
Yes, I did. And I don't know, I just wanted some measurements for it. Plus, I just wanted to use that on my actual track.
I think you went on my front.
Okay, so in that print, there's 4 toes that you can really see in the print. There is the 5th. The 5th is barely touching. That's why I just kind of left that hollow circle there.
You really need to start this slide though with a disclaimer that that is not your wife's foot.
That is not my wife's foot at all. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
This is her friend. She's a very lovely lady. She's a very pretty lady. She's like, but my feet are hideous. I was like, I gotta see those feet. So she took off her shoes and I was like, holy crap.
Wow.
So I asked her to stand on my fireplace mantle so I could take a picture because I had a theory. What if this thing's toe was doing that? And that's why I just barely touched right there on the ground. You know, she's got like that velociraptor claw looking thing going on. With her foot. I know it's ugly, right?
Sweet lady you were talking about.
It's so ugly. Okay, go ahead. This year, Brian. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, February 4th. So like I said, we all take routines driving through this place. It could be a 30-minute trip. It's sometimes we're not camping. It's just we need consistency going there if we're going to climb these things. And so February 4th, a friend and I, we just took a week Saturday. Just said, hey, let's drive down there, cruise through, see what we can find. What happened to us in 2021, I believe, is when the bridge changed.
Yeah.
2021, they took out the old railroad ties. They went in with this big 6-foot wide tin horn, made the creek deeper. Everything went just completely crazy. Didn't find anything for the longest time.
Yeah, it's a ghost town.
Yeah, but we still
Oh,
keep
animal
going,
tracks.
still talking to locals, things like that. So we were there on February 4th, found the 16-inch tracks, very old. We did not cast them. There was no detail. The only thing that we liked about it was, obviously, it was the right size, and it was the right stride, and it was on the exact same bridge. So that gave us a little bit of renewed hope that these things may be starting to come back in that area again after being disrupted for a while. And one thing, and I know you guys may not be able to see it at that distance, but almost every one of these photos is tied to a crescent moon. So I want you guys to keep that in mind if you're out doing any type of
Don't know
research.
why I can't say that's 100% true, but that's just what's happening with us.
And for us, the coincidence, I don't know, but definitely a pattern going on there, so.
But even though these are kind of diminished after we found them, we still got something out of it. Because every track we've cast, they've always been heading south, east. These are going northwest. Now they're coming and going. We know that they're coming and going.
Definitely.
There's a gentleman that has land just north of this area. He has longhorns. His name is, I call him Mr. Nips. he's granted us access to his land, which is great because, you know, we shot. We do believe they're coming through his land. Because we actually, in 2018, we tracked those tracks down the road. You saw the hill impression in the corner.
Yep.
We hit the woods and we tracked it all the way. You just look for a big man trail, basically is what we were doing. And we hit a barbed wire fence, and right there at that barbed wire fence was that same kind of size impression. We stepped over the fence and hit that corner.
And we may or may not have went into that property that night.
Yeah.
It was dark, so.
So hopefully, I mean, he's kind of been ghosting me, so we'll see. You know, he's had some problems out there with his cattle. People have stole his cattle and such. We also call this place Kiamichi sometimes.
Why would we do that?
Yeah, alligator tracks out there. We just heard from the fishermen, there's alligators out here. Yeah, alligators. Like, no way. That's back in the part of the creek, which is a little swampy and marshy. That's where I found this. I'm casting that, 'cause that's just wild. This is a color on the back and everything. This dude's been through some hell.
Yeah.
But this is one of Mr. Nip's steers. It stopped. And you can't read it, but
Now, this is that fence to the far north that we have walked up to and saw where something had been walking over there. And that's why we had a camera back there.
Yeah, we had a camera back there. We get this, so I'm flipping through the pictures. I see that. I'm like, okay, you know, we've all seen one of those before. And then go ahead, man. That stopped because this was walking ahead of it. Does anybody know what that is? Can y'all see that?
Point this out for you a little bit. Tail, back, head, ears. Is it a mountain lion or is it a lion?
It's an African
That's
lion.
a female African lion. Joe must have let one get loose nearby.
So now we got this to look forward to, you know, while we're out there. That's kind of in the back of our mind.
3 Sasquatch, a lion, an alligator,
Alligator missing the
and a
tail.
bunch of methadonians.
And a bunch of
A bunch of
them.
methadonians running around. So, gotta be careful out there in Jumanji.
It's pretty much what we got.
That last slide.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions?
When you go out and talk to the locals, what do they tell you?
Okay, so
How do you approach locals first?
I like to ask everybody straight up if they've ever seen Bigfoot. I don't beat around the bush about it. Whether it's a law enforcement, game warden, the first thing I'm gonna do to you is say, hey, have you ever seen a Sasquatch? And I'll get laughed at 90% of the time, but every once in a while there'll be that one individual that says, well, you know, there was this one time, blah, blah, blah. What's cool about this area is Shane and I have been talking about for years, hosting a conference there for the locals, because we've got so much input from people around there telling us about their stories, things they've heard, things they've seen. I actually called a city official about renting a building, and I told her, I said, you're gonna laugh at me about what I wanna do. And she's like, okay. And I said, we wanna talk about Bigfoot in your community. And she didn't miss a beat. She said, no, we know about Bigfoot. They've been here forever. And she was an older lady. And so, like, I mean, it didn't bother her at all. So we're still trying to plan that, put that together, maybe.
It's gonna be a new show called Finding Town Hall Meeting.
There you go, there you go.
Do the locals have any visuals, or is it just?
Yeah, I actually spoke to a gentleman about 3 years ago. He has siblings, six of them, that live in and around the area. And he was telling me a story of a nephew who was hunting out here, hunting for hogs. And he had 2 dogs with him. He came up on one. It was roaring at him. His dog split. He somehow made it back to his truck, shaking, called the guy I was talking to, which is his uncle, to come pick him up because he couldn't drive. He was so shooken up. So what's going on out there? There's lots of stuff.
Yeah, I had a real cool story recently from a guy who said that his grandpa, so this would have been probably in the 1940s maybe. I don't know, maybe some of you guys, maybe me, maybe, I don't know, but he had to get away from the house. He had to get away from the wife, he had to get away from the kids. Grandma wouldn't let him drink at the house. So he'd grab his beer and he'd get in his pickup and he'd find a dirt road and park. Anybody else ever done that? Make sure my kid ain't looking.
I'm gonna go do it right now.
But he's sitting there in the pitch dark, just sitting outside on the back of his truck, drinking his beer, minding his business. He heard something, walked up, turned the headlights on. 6 to 7 foot tall, hairy guy standing in the road, looked shocked and kind of smiled at him, which was what was really weird about the story. Smiled at him and then crossed the road. And that was probably only 12 miles straight south of this location, so.
But even like Mr. Nips, when I was talking to him about his land north of the creek, first he thought, he was waiting for me to come out of the woods, because I guess he thought I was trying to take his cattle. I mean, I got a Jeep, I was getting a dog in there, so steer, but I was like, no, I'm out here looking for, and I started showing him pictures and whatnot, and he's like, oh yeah, yeah. All right.
Yeah, so, cool. They're used to it, for
Yeah.
sure, so. Anybody else got any questions?
Has anybody followed up on the line? Have y'all heard anything else about that?
So I contacted the local game warden, and that conversation was pretty interesting. So I called him, I said, hey, I got something amazing for you to look at. I said, I'm gonna text you this photo. And I sent it to him, and his words were, you got to be blinking me. And he said, is this real? And I said, it's real, I'm gonna send you a pin drop, I have a camera there. So I sent it to him. Since that day, we had to take our camera away, because every time we showed up, our card was wiped.
Yeah.
So, and I have texted him and called him repeatedly since then. He asked us to not go public with this photo. We sat on it for a few years, and we respected that, but once he kind of ghosted me, I just figured, you know, we'll take the gloves off and see what happens.
Well, also, Brian, you called me one weekend and you're like, dude, there was an African lion spotted in the middle of 35 in Ardmore.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, hell no, we're posting
Yeah,
this.
yeah, it was on a, like a scanner deal on Facebook, and people were driving up and down I-35 saying that there was a lion just sitting in the center median watching cars go by.
So it's still out there.
Still looking for Joe. Still,
Where are you?
somebody needs to let Joe out so he can go get this thing, so.
Pretty, you know what, it just goes to show you just really don't know what's in the woods. Yeah. You never know what you're gonna walk up on. And that's scary. Every time I go there, I would talk to the locals at the gas station and whatnot, especially for the kids, and show them this and say, you need to be careful out there if you're out there with your kids, because, you know, you're not gonna win.
You never know what's out there, so.
That's right.
It definitely changed our perspective after we camped there a few times, so.
I just wanted to explain my little outburst there during your presentation. I saw you walk through that door earlier and knock over what was holding the door open. So
Yeah.
I can verify that he is not coordinated enough to take the size footprints that he found.
Thank you.
Man, catbirds are out.
I know. It's all love, man. It's all love.
It is, yes, sir.
Does the Choctaw, people talk about these things around here, or do they?
You know, that might be a question that you'll probably want to talk to probably Jim about whenever he comes up. I think he works a little bit more with that side of it. We have not personally, so.
We're out on the trail. Yes, ma'am.
I'm not from here, but can you give me the background of what a lion is possibly doing?
So Netflix had a series a few years ago called The Tiger King. You saw that? That's Exotic Joe. He had a sanctuary or something like that with a bunch of lions. There was always rumors of him selling them to people. Yes, ma'am. About 25 miles probably as a crow flies on this location. So.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And so this is Southwest. we're calling it.
And that's just his sanctuary. I believe there's others.
Yeah.
too. Can't afford to.
I think, you know, if you're selling these things, they're adorable when they're this big, right? And then next thing you know, they're trying to eat you, so what do you do with it?
Let it go.
You just open the gate and, yeah.
Yeah. Let it go, man. Go on.
Yeah, just shoot it, shoot kitty. Anybody else?
Do you guys do any nighttime research, like recordings or anything during camp?
We do.
Yeah.
We typically will always set out audio recorders, things like that. We have a really amazing
Now,
audio recording from 2017.
November of last year, we weren't too far from here, and it went on for like, I don't know, 30 or 40 minutes, something like that. I recorded it for 18. It sounds like a pack of canines fighting something big that's roaring. It was ridiculous, but it was so far off, and I have the audio. In fact, and I clean up audio myself, but if there's anyone else that can really clean up some audio and enhance it, let me know. I don't have time. I'll send it to you because it's hair raising, and that's why I went home and built my parabolic and my satellite dish, because I don't want to miss anything like that ever again.
Yeah, and so we're basically only talking about one research area that we, have work in, and there's
Yeah.
other areas that we go to. And we just wanted to try to focus just on this one spot, so. Yes, sir.
You guys know anything about Area X supposedly around here, where they hunt these things? Bigfoot.
Hi, Bill. Yeah, I mean, so our,
Real place?
Yeah.
it's a real place. Our second research area is fairly close to Area X.
Yeah.
I don't know, 20 miles maybe, Bill, maybe 20 miles south of
You
it.
can ask my clutch back in December how I was doing.
Yeah, so it might have been a little rough. My personal sighting that I had in 2018 was about, in that area, about 20 miles south of X, so.
It's actually breathtaking. It's beautiful.
It's right playing those.
Yes.
Yeah, it is private, so.
I guess that's it.
Anybody else? All right, appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Oh, we got one back here.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, I wasn't familiar about the line story, when did that take place?
2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there, back where I grew up at, this was the eighties, there was a guy that, used to raise animals for these canned hunts in Texas, and he was doing it illegally, I might add. And what was going on is he would sell these animals that have been basically hand-fed and reared. These rich guys would pay for a safari and go out and grab a food can and come running.
Oh, wow.
And when the law had actually found out about it, he opened up his doors and turned everything loose. So there for a little while in central Oklahoma, people were seeing hyenas, people were seeing lions, and it's actually kind of funny because in that time frame, there was a series of lion sightings going south. You could actually track which way his lions were.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
Oh, I got a bunch of cats at home. Maybe I can bring them home.
You should, you like a dolphin.
Yeah, big litter box. Feeding me out there.
All right, well, we appreciate you guys coming.
Thank you.
Listening to us. Wow.
All right, folks, we're gonna have about a 10-minute break if you wanna get with Brian and Shane, and Arla Williams will be coming up at about